King Kola of Joba was a ruler unlike any other. At 40 years old, he was wise beyond his years and beloved for his fair judgment and bravery. His people revered him, calling him the Pillar of Joba. By his side was Queen Teama, a strikingly beautiful and sharp-witted woman who was his partner in power. The kingdom was thriving, peaceful, and prosperous. But beneath the surface of harmony, the seeds of chaos were sown by a secret no one could have anticipated. Teama, the chief priestess of Joba, was a woman of unmatched grace and spiritual power. At 35, she had dedicated her entire life to the gods and the people. Her role was sacred, she was untouchable, a vessel of the divine. It was she who interpreted the God's will and ensured the kingdom's spiritual balance. Yet, fate had a way of disrupting even the most sacred of rules. One evening, after an intense ritual to bless the land, Teama found herself alone with the king. Their conversation, meant to be about the kingdom's future, took an unexpected turn. Words led to glances, glances led to touches, and before they realized the gravity of their actions, they had broken a sacred taboo. Months later, the truth could no longer be hidden. Teama was with child, and the father was none other than King Kola. When the news broke, the villagers were struck with disbelief. The idea of a chief priestess bearing a child was unthinkable, and for the father to be the king, it was an abomination. Crowds gathered in the market square, their voices filled with shock and outrage. "The gods will punish us," one elder cried. "The land will wither under this curse." The kingdom, which had once been a beacon of stability, was now on the brink of chaos. The council of elders convened, their faces grim. Both the king and Teama were summoned to answer for their actions. When they arrived, there was no denying the shame in their expressions. King Kola spoke first. "What we have done is unforgivable," he said. "But the child is innocent. He deserves a chance to live." The elders were torn. On one hand, the king's actions demanded punishment, on the other, taking the life of the child was equally forbidden. Queen Teama, however, had no such conflict. Furious and humiliated, she stormed into the council meeting and declared, "This child must not be born. We cannot allow this disgrace to stain the royal lineage." Her words shocked everyone in the room. The elders turned to her, their faces filled with anger. "You would dare propose such a thing?" Elder Amadi said. "Taking the life of an unborn child is the greatest sin of all. You would bring more shame upon us than even the king has." The tension reached its peak when the council announced their decision. A peace sacrifice would need to be performed to cleanse the land, and Teama would have to marry King Kola. Only by legitimizing their union could the kingdom hope to restore its spiritual balance. Queen Teama, now stripped of her title, was given the option to remain in the palace or live quietly. She chose the latter, her pride too great to endure the humiliation. The announcement sent the villagers into an uproar. Marrying a chief priestess to a king was unheard of. "This is madness," shouted one villager. "The gods will never accept this union." But the elders stood firm. The wedding was set and preparations began. On the day of the ceremony, the mood was somber. The villagers attended, not in celebration, but out of fear of what might happen if they didn't. Teama, dressed in royal robes, stood beside the king, her face unreadable. As the vows were exchanged, the elders performed the peace sacrifice, slaughtering a pure white goat and offering its blood to the gods. In the months that followed, the land began to heal. The crops grew lush, the rivers flowed freely, and the people started to believe that perhaps the gods had forgiven them. Teama gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Toby. His birth marked the beginning of a new chapter for Joba, one filled with both hope and uncertainty. But beneath the surface, tensions remained. Many villagers still whispered about the abomination that had almost destroyed their kingdom. Teama, now queen, struggled to find her place in the palace. Her relationship with Kola was strained, and the weight of her dual roles as former priestess and royal consort bore heavily on her. Meanwhile, the elders began preparing for the appointment of a new chief priest, one who would guide the kingdom's spiritual path. As the story of Joba unfolded, one thing became clear: the kingdom would never be the same. While the people had started to accept the changes, the scars of the past lingered. And in the midst of it all, young Toby grew, unaware of the legacy he carried, a legacy that would one day determine the fate of Joba. Toby grew quickly into a curious and intelligent child. His laughter echoed through the palace halls, bringing a sense of joy that had been absent for far too long. Despite the circumstances of his birth, many villagers began to see him as a symbol of hope rather than an abomination. His innocence and charm softened the hearts of even the most skeptical elders. But not everyone in the kingdom had moved on. Whispers of discontent lingered in the corners of the market square and the fields. Some still believed that the union of the king and the former priestess had tainted the land. Others felt betrayed by the elders' decision to allow such an unorthodox marriage. Queen Teama often overheard these murmurs and bore the burden silently. She knew that her place in the palace was fragile despite her newfound role. King Kola, too, struggled to mend the kingdom. Though he loved Toby deeply, his relationship with Teama remained formal and distant. He felt the weight of his people's judgment and knew that his once unshakable reputation had been tarnished. To distract himself, he threw himself into his duties, overseeing the kingdom's trade and defense with meticulous care. Yet, the growing divide between him and his people was a wound he could not ignore. One fateful day, an unprecedented drought struck Joba. The rivers dried, the crops withered, and the skies refused to open. The villagers became restless, seeing the drought as a sign of the gods' lingering anger. The peace sacrifice wasn't enough, some claimed. The land is still cursed. The elders convened once again, this time with a more urgent tone. They called for the appointment of a new chief priest, someone who could restore the gods' favor and guide the kingdom back to prosperity. The process was swift, and a young and ambitious man named Edwol was chosen. He had studied under the elders for years and was known for his spiritual devotion. Upon his ascension, Edwol declared that a grand cleansing ritual must be performed to fully restore balance. He insisted that both the king and queen take part, as their actions were the root of the disturbance. The villagers, desperate for relief, supported the idea. On the day of the ritual, the entire kingdom gathered at the sacred grove. The atmosphere was heavy with tension as Edwol performed the rites, chanting prayers and invoking the gods. Teama stood beside King Kola, her head held high despite the murmurs of the crowd. Toby, too young to understand the gravity of the event, clung to his mother's robes, wide-eyed and curious. As the ceremony progressed, a sudden wind swept through the grove. The villagers gasped, their eyes fixed on the sky. Dark clouds gathered, and within moments, the heavens opened, releasing a torrent of rain. The drought was broken. The people fell to their knees, shouting praises to the gods. But as the rain poured, Edwol turned to the crowd with a stern expression. "The gods have forgiven us," he said, "but let this serve as a reminder. We must never again stray from our sacred traditions." The villagers cheered, but deep down, many knew that the kingdom had changed irreversibly. The rain had brought them relief, but it could not wash away the complexities of the new reality. Teama and Kola returned to the palace with Toby, their relationship still strained but bound by duty. The boy, unaware of the weight of his lineage, continued to grow under the watchful eyes of the kingdom. The elders kept a close guard over him, knowing that his future would shape Joba in ways they could not yet foresee. As the years passed, the kingdom stabilized, though the scars of the past remained. The story of the king and the priestess became a legend, told with equal parts awe and caution. And though the gods had shown their mercy, the people of Joba knew that their strength lay in their ability to face the challenges of the present and learn from the mistakes of the past. Years passed, and Toby grew into a young man of remarkable intelligence and charisma. His presence in the kingdom of Joba was a paradox. Some saw him as a blessing, while others viewed him as a lingering shadow of his parents' transgressions. Despite the whispers, Toby remained unshaken. He carried himself with dignity, his kindness and wisdom earning the respect of many. Teama, now fully embraced as queen, had found her voice as a ruler. Her unwavering grace and ability to mediate between the spiritual and royal duties strengthened the kingdom. She worked tirelessly alongside King Kola to restore the trust of their people. Though their marriage lacked romance, it was built on mutual respect and shared responsibility. Together, they governed with the lessons of their past mistakes ever present in their minds. The turning point for Joba came during the Festival of Renewal, a sacred event held once every decade. It was the first festival since the drought and the scandal that had shaken the kingdom. The villagers gathered in the sacred grove, their hearts heavy with anticipation. For many, it was a test of whether the kingdom had truly healed. During the ceremony, Toby was called to the forefront by the elders. Standing before the people, he was tasked with reciting the kingdom's ancient oath, a rite traditionally performed by the heir to the throne. The boy's voice rang clear and steady, his words filled with conviction. As he spoke, a hush fell over the crowd. For the first time, the villagers saw not the child of a taboo but a symbol of hope and resilience. When the ceremony ended, the elders approached King Kola and Queen Teama with a proposition. "Toby has proven himself worthy," Elder Amadi said. "Let it be known that he shall inherit the throne when the time comes." The declaration was met with both cheers and murmurs, but no one could deny that Toby's presence had unified the kingdom in a way that even the strongest ruler could not. His birth, once seen as an abomination, had become a catalyst for change. In the years that followed, Joba thrived under the continued leadership of King Kola and Queen Teama. When the time came, Toby ascended to the throne, his reign marked by peace and prosperity. The story of his parents' transgressions faded into legend, retold not as a tale of shame but as a lesson in resilience, forgiveness, and the complexities of human nature. As the sun set over the kingdom of Joba, the people looked to the future with hope. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined the kingdom. Instead, they served as a reminder of its strength, its growth, and its ability to endure. And so, the story of the king, the priestess, and their forbidden child came to an end, leaving a legacy that would shape Joba for generations to come.